much for agreeing to participate in our oral history project for the Arthur W. Page Center at Penn State.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you very much. I wanted to begin our interview today by asking you if you could explain some of the inspiration behind you beginning a career in the public relations profession.
Well, I must acknowledge that I started out as a journalist. I was in psychological warfare during the Second World War. I was doing a lot of writing, a nightly analysis of German propaganda. And even before I was drafted into the service a year after Pearl Harbor, I was involved in public relations. I had made the move over and had heard about it, and it seemed enticing, and I decided to make that my career.
And what was your first position in public relations? What was the first?
Well, I had a brother-in-law, late Irving Felt, who had a record company, and I did public relations for that company, and through that I met the Tony people who were sponsoring Mel Torme, and that's a long story, but that's how I got involved. And I joined the Tony Company as public relations director, and I was there 4 years. I did a lot for them, but I also taught myself public relations, every facet of it, legislative problems in the states, employee human resources situations, marketing, certainly marketing, PR for the brand, the company, and the products. And it was a complete exercise that by the time I finished 4 years, I figured, well, I can do this for other people. And that's how I happened to start the company on October 1st, 1952, just 54 years ago this October.
Did you find your company here in the Chicago area?
Well, I had moved to Chicago for Tony, and that was the natural place to be. It was a Chicago-based company until little Richard came along and became big and finished Harvard Business School, and he joined us, and then it became Chicago and New York co-headquarters, and they're about equal size now, both our two largest offices.
Looking back on your career in public relations, what are some of your biggest challenges that you've faced as a public relations executive?
Well, everything's a challenge. In other words, you can say that a crisis thing, which we've had plenty of for clients, is the most important, but a marketing challenge, introducing a product or a brand, employee relations, any facet of public relations, a government problem in Washington or a state problem. I can't even identify which problems are particularly significant, but at the time, each one of them is crucial.
What would you say are your biggest professional success stories?
Well, you know, we've had hundreds and hundreds of clients over the years. We've got 45 offices now around the world. I must acknowledge I don't even know all the things that are being done in Kuala Lumpur, let alone Sydney or Melbourne or London or Paris or wherever. I don't even know what's exactly going on in Sacramento or any of our other U.S. offices, except that I get status reports. And to the extent that the international offices are faithful to the monthly status report, I'm pretty well briefed on that. The U.S. offices tend to be more faithful, and I think I criticize them more or call them and say, where is it, if I don't get the status report? And it goes to other people, of course, not just to me.
In the years that you created your company, did you have a mentor?
Well, I must say that the two real mentors were the two brothers who ran the Tony Company, Neeson and Irving Harris. More Irving, he was the style he was a student. Neeson was more of a salesman and more of an outgoing guy. They both were alumni of Yale, but still, Neeson had a big sense of humor. He was an outgoing guy. Irving was more of a studious type. And I related to both of them. They were both examples for me of business. My father was a lawyer. My older brother, Albert, was a lawyer. Another doctor, Morton Edelman, practiced medicine. And so what did I know about business? Nothing. But the 4 years at Tony, I really learned about business. I learned about market research, about advertising, about sales, and the whole situation of being in business.
As you survey the scene now in public relations, do you have a sense that there are more or fewer pace-setting individuals in the field, visionaries, giants in the field? Do you feel that your profession, you have more or less of those individuals?
Yeah, I think, Gigi, that a successful person is a successful person. In other words, it could be a corporate person who's really fantastic and has a staff. I think General Motors, that I read, they have 80 people on their staff. I mean, they've built a huge capability, and they still hire outside firms. But it's the individual that makes the function effective or not. And an internal person, there are some wonderful PR directors in various companies who are in every facet of the company. They're involved in Washington. They're involved in everything that's going on. And others do somewhat less, but take advantage of the opportunity. And I think the same challenge is true of us. We often start on a brand, and from a brand, we lead to corporate public relations, to reputation management, and first maybe a second brand. I mean, if it's a growing, we've had one client, which I won't name, but which started as a single brand and a second brand. It's become one of our huge accounts just in the past year and a half.
What qualities do you look for when hiring a senior executive in your company?
Well, I'm not doing as much interviewing as I used to, but I would say willingness to work hard, an attractive personality, a good speaker, a good writer, a person who can communicate, and experience. I mean, depending on the level at which we're hiring. If it's right out of college, it's another kind of thing, but we're interested in what your credentials are from college. Did you work on the school paper? Did you succeed in extracurricular things? Did you have a good academic record? So we look at all those things and hope to get the best. I think public relations is improving in that regard. We had a hard time getting the best. And even today, we tend to recruit from the PRSSA schools that have it, have a PRSSA chapter. I'd like to have more Ivy League people, more of people who are pre-selected when they were young to be outstanding because they were in hard schools. I don't think we're there yet. We have to become better known, better respected before we get all those kinds of opportunities to recruit the very best. They've been pre-selected for various reasons, high school records and whatnot. So we'd like to have more of them, but it's happening. We have a good staff and quality people here and all over the world.
Do you feel that colleges and universities adequately prepare their students for a career in public relations?
Not a bit. I mean, I think that the ones that have public relations courses tend to be less well-known universities. And we have to, as I was suggesting, cross over and get more of the majors to pay attention to public relations. They don't now, as you know. It's just not. It's not a course. It's not considered a part of an academic curriculum.
Are you troubled by the tendency that some professionals have now substituted the terms communications or public relations in place of marketing or marketing communications? Do
Well,
you feel that there's a problematic nature with the term?
I do indeed. In fact, I don't even like marketing public relations. It suggests that we're another outlet such as advertising. We have nothing to do with advertising. We do a completely different kind of work, and public relations involves, as I was suggesting earlier, many other things, you know, marketing a company, marketing a brand, but also crisis problems, human resources problems, situations in Washington, legislative relations, and states, depending on circumstances, where there's a particular situation, we get into state relations. So those are some of my thoughts on that subject.
What can public relations professionals like yourself do to make that distinction more clear in the business world and also just in the world at large? Make the distinctions between those terms more clear to people.
Well, we don't have the greatest pool, as I suggested earlier, and I'd like to widen the pool and being able to get some Harvard people, get some Stanford people, but it'll happen over time. I think we're making progress. It may not happen in my time, but I think that the quality of the company and the interviewer helps attract good people. Now the question is, are they going to initially come to us or not? Are they going to put their name on a list and write us a letter saying they'd like to be interviewed? Once in a while I hear from a student from a prestige university, and I don't mean to denigrate the state schools and other schools from which we get people, but we'd like to have more of a variety of backgrounds and talents.
How has the new media affected public relations? For instance, the internet.
Oh, I think it's had an enormous effect. And it's only just beginning. Blogging and word of mouth and two-way communication, citizen journalism, personal journalism. We had a meeting with Secretary of Defense Don Rumsfeld in Washington last week. He's an old friend of mine from Chicago, and we were able to arrange to bring 20 people over there. And he spoke about the fact that reports from the field, if a fellow goes out on a raid, comes back, and on the way back he's talking to his wife or his girlfriend or his mother, telling about what's happening before the New York Times even hears about it or puts it on their internet. But these soldiers, Don points out, are in direct contact with the U.S. public by their disclosure, their calls to their contacts at home, and you know, in 5 minutes after they've done something, people know about it, and well before it gets on the internet of an major newspaper or in the paper the next morning. So it's a different world, and personal journalism, there's a two-way street. You don't just send it out as you do the top-down in a major newspaper or any newspaper. You expect to be involved in two-way communications. People answer, and they should answer. That's the difference between that and a newspaper or a magazine. You can write a letter to the editor, but it's given a certain space, and a lot of people don't pay attention to it.
What do you feel are the greatest challenges facing executives, public relations, senior executives today, and how can these challenges be met?
Well, I think we still have a recognition problem. I think we've moved from here to here. We're gaining stature and recognition all the time, but we have a long way to go. In other words, it isn't like the lawyer, it isn't like a doctor, it isn't a well-known, accepted, recognized profession. And we'll get there, but I don't think we should look to law or medicine or those professional areas. I think we should look to advertising. The problem is that the advertising agencies, having acquired everybody but Edelman, are in effect having a negative influence on what public relations does. You know, it's too much like advertising, and I believe it's a way different kind of an activity or profession, if you will, with many different callings that I've commented on earlier.
How have recent ethical lapses in business, for example, the Enron situation a couple of years ago, how have they affected the practice of public relations?
Well, Enron's just one. It happens to be more recent. There's been a really serious collapse of corporate ethics, corporate positions, and a lot of companies have been seriously affected, either gone out of business or you know, paying too much to senior executives, stock options, all kinds of things. And I think it's not public relations, but the corporate world that's gone through travail.
Do you feel that public relations, the industry has taken criticism because people have a tendency to kind of lump it all together? That in fact, the example that you just gave, it was the corporate leaders, not the public relations executives who were found responsible for dishonesty.
Well, public relations still has to earn its way, and any setback, a couple of big agencies were involved, public relations firms, in problems. I don't think that they're a permanent stain. I think that they were en passant, if you will. They just, they had an influence briefly, but they haven't affected the public relations field in the long haul. You know, we're not unlike other people. It can happen in public relations, it can happen in advertising, it can happen in practicing law, it can happen in any area. And it happened to happen in with two public relations firms.
In your opinion, is professional accreditation necessary in order to guarantee ethical standards within the field of public relations?
Yeah, even if you didn't have the word ethical, just standards. I really don't think so. I don't ask people who are here whether they're accredited or not. I never ask that question in an interview, although I don't interview as much, but I don't think our people do. I don't think it has caught on in that sense of being a decisive point with regard to, are you going to hire this person or aren't you?
In your opinion, is continuing education necessary for executive, senior executive, public relations professional? And if so, what type of education or training is necessary?
Well, I don't think university education is indicated at all. They've had that, and the best thing is experience. I mean, you learn more from being in a public relations environment, being in a company, being in a large firm where you're practicing public relations, and maybe you started as an assistant and you worked your way up to a corporate director, and you learned on the job. And I think that's the best way still for public relations to to be learned. I'm not discounting what's learned at college and graduate schools, but I think the most talent and capability in the field is developed on the job.
Learn by doing, then.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. In your opinion, what constitutes ethical public relations?
Well, it starts with who you are. I mean, are you an ethical person? If you have to bring to public relations what it is you represent, the kind of person you are. If you're an ethical person and you grew up that way and your parents, my father was a wonderful role model for me in terms of ethics and standards. He practiced law for over 50 years. One brother was a lawyer, the other was a doctor. So I had a professional environment. And I think that's critical in making a public relations person.
What are the most significant changes you've observed during your career in public relations? If you needed to compare the industry now versus...
Well, we used to just get the story published. That was the assignment. And however, I must say that the 4 years I spent at the Tony Company were counterindicated. I tend to talk that way because I think that happens with a lot of people. But we've broadened out tremendously. We have a research operation in Washington. We have a little advertising group in our Washington office, Blue Advertising, which was not designed to compete with the big ad agencies in splashy shampoo or food advertising, but rather issues, corporate issues, that sort of thing. And we tend to do work for a lot of trade associations, as well as companies. And many of our major clients come out of our Washington office, where it starts with a specific legislative assignment and then migrates into a very large corporate program. Maybe you get a brand first, and then it grows from that. That's happened to us several times just in the past year or two.
What do you feel is the key in building trust and credibility in a company or organization?
In the company or the public relations firm?
In the company at large, and then if you would like to answer in terms of public relations also.
Well, companies don't establish a reputation overnight. The companies that really have a favorable corporate reputation are those that have been in business. I'm not going to mention names because I'd leave some out, a lot of them. But we represent large companies that have been in business 50 or 100 years, and that's how long it takes. It's very rare to be an overnight sensation. I mean, it happens. I mean, Microsoft's an example. I said I wouldn't mention client names, but that's one that comes to mind. You know, that just come out of the blue. They haven't been around like GE for a long, long time, or many others, but they are quickly, and I think it relates to the internet period and the speeding up of everything.
Is it important for a corporation or an organization to have an ethical mission statement or credo as part of their overall mission statement?
Yeah, I think it's probably part of the code of ethics of most companies. And I think most public relations firms have a mission statement, but I must say I can't repeat it by heart. And we have it, and it's nice to have in the front of the brochure or something, but it's not how we live. I mean, we live based on our moral standards that were ingrained by our parents and teachers and religious leaders or whoever else we were in contact with. And you build your moral code as you develop as a person. And You know, you can develop right or wrong. If you live in another kind of an environment, you might get off in the wrong direction and make a crucial error.
What is the role of the economic bottom line in decision-making for a public relations firm?
Well, I've been kind of unusual in that regard. I want to do things, and I think later about are we going to make money on it or not. But it seems to have worked. I just said, you know, we have to open in Australia, or we have to have, now it's time to go back into Japan. We had an entry and it didn't work, and so we went back recently, the last year or two, and it's going very well. But it's not easy. It's never been easy to succeed in Tokyo. So that's the way it is.
In recent years, agencies have grown while other corporate public relations staffs they've shrunk as a consequence of cost-cutting or mergers, as we've discussed. Why do you think that these organizations or departments are merging?
Well, as I said earlier, I think it's up to the individual. Really able, and there are many of them, I see them in the PR seminar off the page. There are many outstanding public relations directors who've been in corporations for years. And if you have that assignment, I'd had it for 4 years at the Tony Division of Gillette. You go around, you get to know people, and you work with the market research person or the advertising or other departments, sales departments, production. You go up to the plant, you get to know the manufacturing facility and the people involved. So you, whether you're agency, no, agency is usually restricted. I must say, if you're a corporate, you have the wide open opportunity to get yourself into every facet of the company. As I said, from Washington to state legislatures to the employee relations of all your plants. It's wide open. If it's an agency, they usually they'll hire us for a specific, a brand or second brand, and maybe we'll end up corporate reputation, although usually the fees are more attractive in the marketing area than they are in the corporate area. But we like to represent the corporation if we're doing the brand.
What is the role of corporate social responsibility in today's business?
Corporate what?
Corporate social responsibility?
Oh, I think that the nation looks to the big companies to do it right, to have good products, sell them at a good price, and to be a good citizen. And if we don't have that, we have real problems. I mean, we're not a communist or socialist nation. We can't impose it from the top. It has to come from the bottom up, the corporate executives, finally the CEO, and we have to work with those people. And if we can influence them somewhat in a positive way, we do. But yes, it's very important to help develop corporations. We can't invent the products. We can't help them in sales, too much. But that's not our job. Our job is corporate reputation and how they function.
Do you feel in today's world that the public demands more from the companies that they purchase products from in terms of social responsibility and other things?
Yeah, I think that people are conscious of the parent, but only to some extent. I think brands, if you ask people who makes Kleenex, everybody knows Kleenex, but I would think that only a small percentage would know that it's Kimberly-Clark, which happens to be a client, but we knew about it beforehand. I think people become associated. Hershey's lucky they have both the brand name and the corporate name is the same. Gillette was that way too.
feel that the public's opinion about a product is measured? Is it just by sales, or do you feel that there are other intangible things that you can measure a customer's commitment to a product or to a brand? Is it just through sales, or do you think there are other ways?
Well, you
gauge
can't downgrade the role of advertising. But the most important thing is it the right product? Is it a needed product?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a good product? Is it priced right? Does it do a job? Whatever it is. And ultimately, we can't do anything about that. The only people who can do something about that are the research and development people and the marketing people in a company. And we can help in that regard as we get into marketing, public relations. But it's the history of the company. We talked about that earlier. It's the reputation and the brand. But often the brand is, they don't even know that, as I said earlier, they don't know the name of the parent company. They go for the brand.
We spoke about the media previously. Do you feel that public relations individuals foster inappropriate relationships with the media at times? Do you feel that that's a
I
problem?
don't know anything about that. In other words, when I first went to China, I was told, you put $20 bill in the envelope with the release. I said, we don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And we started a program among all the PR directors not to do that anymore. I don't mean PR directors, I mean the companies, the PR firms that were in China by that time. We had been there 15 years or more. And I said, we don't do that. That's not our practice. If that's the way it is in China, we'll do without it, and they can take the release or not.
And what happened as a result of that decision?
We don't do it, and I think the field doesn't do it.
Mm-hmm. We spoke earlier comparing public relations to other industries such as law and finance. Do you feel that the industry will be recognized in the future as a profession that's comparable to those professions?
I don't think we're that kind of a profession.
Okay.
The law and medicine requires 4 years at medical school plus residency. The law requires 3 years of law school and often summer work as in a law firm, and not as rigid as the residency rule in medicine. But we're not that. We're different. If anything, we're more related to advertising. I don't like it personally, but to the extent that people define us as being like advertising, like marketing, I don't like that. That's not, we do that. We promote brands and companies, as I've suggested earlier, but we have so many other aspects of the assignment if we have a broad corporate reputation program. Otherwise, we may have a specific program that defines what we do very rigidly.
We spoke earlier about the moral upbringing that people receive as a result of their families or communities. What moral philosophy do you use personally to guide your business decisions, or do you?
I do what I did. I talked about my father. I talked about other mentors, but mostly it's the way you were brought up. It's your own moral code. Public relations, has a few different aspects: the telling the truth, telling it completely, telling it accurately, getting out the story. But those are little wrinkles. It's mostly who you are and the way you handle yourself, and I think that this is good. I mean, I think we're making very good progress in getting good people.
What do you think is the future, both for your company and also public relations at large?
Well, I never dreamed we'd have 45 offices and be this big and the largest independent, all that kind of stuff. So it's way beyond my fondest dreams. I never had any such thought. I thought I'd have a little Chicago office maybe. And, but I think the field has grown enormously. You know, we never dreamed about having research or having a little advertising group. And those have been invaluable lately. Some of our a major trade association client that we've done some work for has come in with a huge program that we had to compete for, but which came our way. You know, that's all to the good.
What would you like your legacy to be in public relations?
He was a professional public relations person.
That's how you'd like to be remembered.
He established standards and ethical standards, but also codes of practice that people followed, that became standard in his company, and now followed by Richard Edelman, who's our president and CEO, as I go into my older years.
How important are leadership qualities?
Leadership.
Leadership qualities in public relations professionals.
Oh, I don't think you can get anywhere without it. I just think if you're a bookworm, if you're internalized, you've got to go out. I mean, public relations, the field being in public relations practice calls for a lot of dimensions. You've got to be able to write, to speak, when I was younger, my wife entertained. We had clients at home. I mean, there are a lot of dimensions. You can call it leadership, but I call it being a business person. And but being a business person, part of that is you know, leadership and getting up there and leading a company and leading yourself, really, too.
The Arthur W. Page Center at Penn State is committed to fostering integrity in public communication. Can you suggest a few ways a program like this can be made even more effective?
I think you're on the right track. I mean, the things I read about what the Arthur Page Society is doing, the stories you handed me, Penn State Open-Centered, PR's ethics, quality, that's all terrific. And I think it's, you know, one wouldn't have expected it to come from Penn State, but I'm delighted that it has. And we need more universities to do a comparable kind of thing. So I can't tell you what more should be done. You know, I think, frankly, as I said earlier, ethics is focused on too much, and I think in your program as well. I mean, I think you have it or you don't, but it's there are many things about this practice that don't involve ethics, that involve strength, capability, experience, digging in and getting it done. Can you do it or can't you?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's all in terms of the questions that I have, unless there were other things you would like to share with me in terms of stories or...
No, I'm talked out anyway.
You're done? Okay, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.